My first experience with a Skinwalker happened when I was just 16. I was in Boy Scouts and was on one of those camping trips with some guys from my troop. We were deep in the woods, about an hour hike from the nearest trail entrance, then about an hour hike from the nearest hiking trail. We didn't have a scoutmaster with us on this camping trip, so we were on our own, but we were armed. We all had a hunting rifle, as well as a handgun. There were 5 of us. On the first night, we heard distant muffled screams, but we never thought anything of it, saying maybe it was an animal in heat. The rest of the night was uneventful. We just ate dinner, shot at some things, and went to bed. On the second day, we all got up and hiked to a fish pond. But on the way there, things just didn't feel right. It was dead silent. Usually, you'd hear some birds singing, as well as the wind rustling the leaves and the trees. But again, there was nothing. After a while, we reached the pond and started fishing. After about an hour, we realized something was wrong. There were fish in the pond, but they were all dead. So we decided to go back to the camp and hunt for our dinner. When we got back to the camp, though, we found something really disturbing. A mutilated deer had been left about 10 yards from our tents. After we found the deer, we had heard the scream again. This time, much closer. We had decided to stay at the camp. After we found the deer, we heard the scream again, but this time it was much closer. We had decided to stay at the camp that night, keeping our guns trained in various directions. I don't think any of us got much sleep that night. At about 2 in the morning, we started hearing footsteps. Then we started hearing a strange laugh that kept going for about 30 minutes. Then, after a while, I saw it. About 50 feet away from me, there was an approximately 6 or 7 foot tall creature walking on 2 legs with its back hunched over. Then it looked at me. In the dim light, I could see its face. And it had no eyes from what I could tell, and the way it moved was extremely unnatural. It would twitch around. After a while, it walked back into the tree line. When morning came, I told everyone what I saw, and we decided it was time to leave. Fortunately for us, the hike back was uneventful until we got to the car. The deer's head was left on the hood of the car. Needless to say, we never went back there. I live in a suburban neighborhood with lots of large trees. Even before too late in the day, it gets pretty dark and moody. My mom sent me on an errand once to stop by a friend's house down the street and to pick some things up. The route takes me through a stretch of road that has some parked cars on either side of the street. It was about 6 in the early evening. About 15 minutes into my walk, I saw a little kid, not sure if it was a boy or girl, riding a bike in my direction from the opposite side of the road. I also happened to see that sitting by one of the parked cars ahead of me was a skinny black dog. It was large and slender looking, like a greyhound, but also shaggy. The dog just seemed to be sitting there, looking in the kid's direction. It didn't seem to have noticed me, so I just walked forward to fulfill my errand. It wasn't until I was some 10 to 15 feet away that I realized something was not right with this animal. It remained seated on its haunches, but it was now very clear to me that its back legs were much too long for its body, folded in an unnatural way. But more disturbing than that was what it was doing with its front paws. This is something that I will never forget seeing. The dog's forelegs were positioned in front, where they should have been, but I stopped in my tracks when I realized that the paws were patting the ground in unison, kind of like the way you feel for lost keys in a blanket. The dog seemed to be drumming the ground in anticipation or excitement, or it was pretending to be a dog with its paws on the ground, and it was looking at this clueless child heading its way. I must have made some sort of sound, even as I was frozen in place, because the patting stopped, and this thing slowly got up on its back legs and stood up, like a man. It was easily 6 feet tall, maybe more. I turned around and began to sprint home. I had my back to it, but I knew it was looking at me now, so I just got out of there. To this day, I don't know what happened to that little kid. So last night, me and some friends went on a camping trip for my fiance's 18th birthday. We went to the Red Cliffs Desert Reserve in St. George, Utah. All night, we had a very eerie feeling, but just wrote it off as being an hour out into the desert, in the middle of the night. Throughout the night, things kept getting more and more heated between us, for reasons we didn't really understand. A guy who was with us and I went to go get some firewood, and started chopping a dead limb off a tree. But I kept stopping because I was hearing stuff moving outside of my field of vision. I felt like I was in danger, felt like I was being watched from at least 2 places, and got the feeling I needed to leave, so I just stopped chopping the limb halfway through. The 2 dogs we had at one point started freaking out and were terrified of something that was behind our tent. So we went and looked, but didn't see anything, so we assumed it was just a coyote or some animal. Me and my fiancée are both empaths, and she's a medium, and we have both had many supernatural experiences throughout our lives, and we knew something was wrong. We laid down in the tent, and she nearly had a panic attack, so we decided to go sleep in the car, instead of with everyone else. As soon as we got into the car, she broke down crying, and couldn't explain why, so I chalked it up to stress or something. Eventually, we both fell asleep, and sometime between 3 and 4 in the morning, I woke up because I had been having a dream that there were 2 witches around us that we couldn't see, but they were going to send creatures or something after us, and I woke up with a really bad feeling. I decided to sleep more, but then my fiancée sat up very suddenly and said, "I keep hearing things. It sounds like there's girls talking and giggling, so let's see if they're awake, and maybe we can get the hell out of here." She then went to go open up the door, but I had a very bad feeling and begged her not to. But soon as she did, the voices stopped. The dogs weren't making noise. They both are attention whores, by the way. And the coyotes we had been hearing since maybe about 2 a.m., and even all the crickets that had been deafening the night, were silent. So she closes the door, and the voices start again. Around 5:30 a.m., we see a light coming towards us, and it's one of our friends, who says she and another friend can't sleep, and the dogs are freaking out, and they want to leave. So we start comparing what's been going on the past few hours, and they said they had heard the voices too, and they thought it was us. So they almost left the tent too, to see if we wanted to leave, but they felt like they shouldn't leave the tent. We pack up and leave by 6 a.m., and something just doesn't feel right. We go back around about 10:30 a.m. for some friends who decided to stay the whole time, and they say that after we left, they kept hearing things, both small and quadrupedal, but also large and bipedal. So they made noise until the things went away, then built the fire back up. We officially left around 11 a.m. and didn't want to look back, and decided to never go back there again, and all felt a sense of relief when we finally made it back through the hour-long trip back to the road. Now we think we might have been followed because, home alone, we start hearing growling and other noises, as well as the TV in the living room turning on and off by itself. Is there anyone that can offer advice on what to do? September 15th, 2018. I don't know how to begin this. I decided to make an account solely to get help, as I'm afraid to ask anyone I know personally. I'm 24 years old, roughneck working up in northern Minnesota logging, among other work. Recently, yesterday, due to our bow hunting season opening up, I've been spending my time out in the woods. I live in a fairly large plot of land near Ely, Minnesota. There are a few towns over the population of 2,500 this far north, and neighbors are far and few. But terrain is unforgiving compared to the rest of Minnesota. This ties into my story. Anyways, let's get into it. I begin by climbing into a non-permanent stand, about 2.5 to 3 miles from my house, in the state forest adjacent to my property. It was opening morning, and all was on par. The sun was barely creeping out when I looked off into the woods and spotted something odd. A white-tailed deer, perhaps 40 yards away. The woods up here are so thick, I could barely see the body and the neck. That's what confused me the most. It was sickly gray, pieces of dried matted fur clinging to its bony physique. It looked like a piece of roadkill, still standing. I pulled on my backpack that was hanging off to my left for binoculars, to get a closer look. At this time, I had the urge to look back. I felt like the back of my head was vibrating, like literal vibrations. I felt a cold sweat work its way across my body. I looked back and saw the deer, now, turned towards me. It was taller than a usual deer, but physically looked inept. Now, I saw its head and antlers, and the worst of all was its eyes. Its eyes, even from a distance, I could see, were milky white, completely off hue from the usual black or brown of deer. Its head was disproportionate, favoring its left side with a bulging jaw. The antlers were unusual. Instead of the fresh new transition from velvet to antler, it was muddy green with an almost pus-colored flavor to it. I don't know how to explain the feeling that came over me. I've been through things I just can't explain. I've seen people I care about die mere meters from me, and this is the sole time I was truly afraid. I was making eye contact for maybe a minute maximum, blinked, and this thing was just gone, as if I almost imagined it. I still had the overwhelming feeling to run, which I did. I noticed as soon as I made it down with all my gear that the usual sounds of the forest weren't there. No birds, no squeaking of squirrels, not even as much as the wind. It was a dead silence, and it was still. September 16th, 2018. It's the next night at about 9 p.m. I went through the regular chores and fed the animals on my small hobby farm. As it began to get darker, I got a shiver and that weird sense of being watched. I've tried letting the dogs out so they can run and use the bathroom, but both my large pit bull lab mix and German shepherd refused to go outside. Every time I tried to call them out, they would run off to the other side of the house. I can't help to think that something is actually going on here. Not trying to be controversial or start a debate. I know my wits, myself, and this area. The lady friend is coming over tonight, and she wants to talk about it. Again, I'd really enjoy everyone's opinion. September 17th, 2018. I had a good talk with the girlfriend overnight. I relaxed a bit and went to bed, thinking things had a logical answer to it, and that I may have been overreacting. I slept throughout the night, and I'm at work at the moment updating. Unfortunately, not all was as perfect as I thought. My girlfriend is staying with the dogs until I get home, and sometime after I left, she woke up to hearing banging and something going wild outside, near the chicken coop. As she walked out once the sun came up, something decently sized got into the coop and killed every last chicken. Later, after I got home, I examined each one, and she was right. They remained almost untouched, minus the head from the neck up. No feathers in the coop besides the usual. Now for the most odd part. She said when she came out, the door was wide open, with the chickens all laid out in a fairly crude line, inches apart, headless, facing the house. I originally thought a fox, but she said every single chicken was accounted for. None were eaten, just killed. I thought maybe one of the dogs got out, but she was adamant that they were inside our room with her. I had to make sure the coop was near impenetrable for foxes or predators. But it looks as if the door was just left open, or something unlocked it. Very weird. I'll update once I'm home. Hey guys, currently sitting on the porch. Today was a fairly productive day for the issues we've been having. I'd like to thank each of you commenters, as even the negative ones have pointed us in a direction we wouldn't have found without you. I installed bright LED lights along the house and barn. I've been taking the dogs out on leashes, and yes, they're still adamant on remaining indoors. It's 10 p.m., and even with the lights on and everything, I still feel like I'm missing something. We'll be getting in touch with the local tribe sometime this week face to face, and planning our next move. The air is chilling and the wind is blowing through the woods around me. I have not heard any wildlife near the house, and I dare not go deeper into the forest. Someone mentioned trail cameras, and I have set 6 up in areas I hunt near the property. Before this incident, I would get 12 to 20 pictures a day. Since, I have not yet received a single one. Nothing weird going on tonight, thankfully. I'm going to head inside here and watch a movie with the girlfriend, and call it a day. So last night, me and my wife were traveling back from the Grand Canyon to Texas, and decided to drive through the night. We ended up going through the Gila National Forest between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. I think. We saw lots of wildlife throughout the night, but we expected this and just drove extra cautiously. Well, between 12 a.m. and 1 a.m., we came around a turn, and were met with what looked like 3 black panthers with glowing yellow eyes that seemed to pierce through your soul. It's hard to explain unless you were there to see it. It happened very quick, but as soon as we passed them, we both said, "What the heck was that?" It was very strange because even with the bright lights of the car shining directly on them, they still looked dark as night, and all you could see was the outline of them and those soul-piercing eyes. They did not move an inch, and just stared right into our eyes. It was very scary, and we tried to play it off as wolves or something, but after doing some research, I'm not sure what we saw. Any insight would be greatly appreciated. This is my first post, but I have to find out more. I can't get those eyes out of my head. Hey guys, Drybones here. Thanks for watching the video. Leave a thumbs up and leave a comment. I always love seeing what you guys have to say. Also, if you guys are into video games, check out Impish Matt, link down below. He's a small channel, and I would love to help him out. As always, you guys are the best. Hey guys, Drybones here. Thanks for watching the video. Leave a thumbs up and a comment. I always love seeing what you guys have to say. Also, if you're into video games, check out Impish Matt, link down below. He's a small channel, but has great content, and I would love to help him out. And as always, you guys are the best, and I'll see you in the next episode. Oh yeah, and one last thing. Stay spooky, my friends.